Oh, I'm recording. So, hello. Welcome to another Peterson Academy DiaLogos. This DiaLogos is going to be a little bit different because there is less of us. It's going to be more of a debate, kind of a pushback opponent process between Juan and I and Gerald. Gerald can only stay for 35 minutes, so he may have to bug out early. Now, what brought up this proposal was the previous dialogos I had where I talked about these ideas of faith and sacrifice. And Juan posed the question, is the difference between sacrifice and investment faith? And that was a good question. And so we're going to follow through with that today. So Juan's going to offer a proposal on that theme. I'm going to be the lead listener and kind of tease this out. Oh, sorry. No, Gerald, you be the lead listener and tease this out. I will kind of take a secondary listener role and observe, and then I probably will push back and give some um, line of a good line of questioning as I let you and Juan kind of develop the dialogue. So take it away, Juan.
Okay, so I think the proposal it's let's say its core axiom gravitates around this idea of faith and of sacrifice. And so uh, I guess I guess taking it from a question because it emerged out of a question, I guess I'm going to propose that sacrifice is in fact um, the distinction between an investment and sacrifice is in fact determined by faith, and I'm going to define faith as um, when we commit to something with an action um, that seems perfectly rational and logical, but we don't know what the outcome of taking that action is going to ultimately be. And so we have to operate on faith. Faith kind of like closes that loop of trust into taking that action, and that is what makes something sacrifice outside of an investment, because an investment uh, you're kind of like expecting a return on your investment from the get-go, right? And so that's primarily what I guess I would say about that. But then there was another thing that emerged this morning as I was um, reading the Bible as well. Um, and it was I was reading Hosea and chapter 6, and the verse 6, like it struck me because it was about this idea of sacrifice. It says, "For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings." And so I think the right sacrifice has to do with this idea of what love is and participating in this idea of love ultimately. Whether it's God's love for us or our love for other people, in which we show God's love through us to other people. Um, in that sense, then when we sacrifice, I think it's also, I think it's in one of the epistles where it says that we should offer our flesh as a living sacrifice. Um, it's for that purpose. It's for the purpose of like participating in love, right?
Can I throw a question out now, or should I wait?
Yeah,
Yep.
go for it. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so you defined faith as committing to something with an action that seems logical and rational, but we don't know what the outcome will be. And now you're talking about God's love. So you gave us a secular definition, but now you brought in religion. I just want to make sure I'm going down the right path as I listen. Is this going to become evident as you go along?
Yes, so I think that you can engage in faith both, like in anything. You can engage in faith towards God or towards like a secular action, you know? And whatever you put your like faith in, when you commit to an action, that kind of like shows most fundamentally what you believe in, right? Like,
Okay, so I guess we'll just let it unfold then. It'll unfold on its own, or
uh,
I'm
eh,
confused whether you're going to go secular or religious.
well, I want to argue this from the point of view of God, like from a let's call it like a teleological perspective of like there is a purpose um to faith, there is a
Okay, you
purpose
know
to
what,
this idea of
Juan?
sacrifice.
Just go ahead. Forget I ever said anything because I don't want to throw you off base here. I'll let it unfold. Go ahead and go through your argument, and it'll unfold itself. Sorry.
Yes, no worries, no
Yeah,
worries. I think that
I'd
was
be interested to see if we can ground this theological language in the language of secularism. That might be a worthy pursuit in this. So go, yeah, keep unfolding it.
um yeah, no, I mean, I think that's basically the core of my argument. I don't know, like, if you guys want me to clarify anything that maybe seems like a little bit
So
more. Um,
I'd say just carry on as you intended, and we'll figure it out.
okay.
so is faith then a principle of action? You could say principled action. So this idea of faith, it's this principled action in all intelligent beings. Because if you're an intelligent being, unlike unlike a non-intelligent being, you just react to your environment, stimulus and response, right? Even cells can do that. But an intelligent being can stop for a second, conceptualize, think about what would be the best actions to take, and then they move their body. They command their body to move in respect to the principle that they conceptualize. And that would be faith. And if you think about that, that is the moving principle in all intelligent beings. Man wouldn't be doing anything if it weren't for reason of their faith.
Mhm.
I'd say
Okay.
just carry on, carry on. I think we're going to throw you off, and time is
No, I
limited.
think
Can we let him go a bit, Caden, and then we'll figure it out?
no, I think
Yeah.
I think Caden's addition is also, it's also very pertinent there, because I do think it's right to say that every intelligent being uh by necessity needs to, it exists on faith, you know. Now the question is, what do people put their faith on? You know, they can either put their faith on themselves, or they can put themselves on a transcendent being, or they can put their faith or on maybe something like a, for example, like science, or all of these different principalities that also have like their own kind of like wills or structures, you know, like they have a purpose of their own, you know, like say anything. I think you can conceptualize anything that has a purpose, like a will, as a principality, you know. And so, for example, like you can understand, for example, the principality of like science, for example, is like to try to like um, break down reality into its constituents and study its constituents, you know. And so it has a will of its own, you know. Now I think that is, all of these different principalities are meant to have, they have a directionality, so like they're meant to be aligned with the will of God, you know. But they can also choose to not, you know. And also like man has this ability to steward all of these principalities, and like to kind of like guide them wherever it is that man sees fit. That's why we, in a way, you know, it's part of the Christian theology that we're made in the image of God. So we have this, we're kind of like this weird creature that is in between divinity and like and mortality, or like living in the realm of the animals. And we're kind of like in that weird space between those two, where we um where we are subject to these principalities, but also we act upon them, and we kind of like steward them. I don't know if I'm straight, like if I'm going too much on different tangents, but I think they're all kind of like related, like on a weird, very delicate thread, like
So
there.
is this power of faith then? Is it a principle of the divine? Like
So
God operates by it is what I'm. If I'm gonna use the theology
you
language.
can, let's call it like, let's put it, I guess, in like metaphysical terms. It's like you can you can it's like a tool that it's meant to be used to align yourself with the will of God. But you can use that tool, that same tool, to put your faith on other things that are misaligned with the will of God, you know? And when you do so, well, it's inevitable that you will also suffer the consequences of being misaligned with the telos of the world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But when it's used properly, it's meant to guide you into like into theosis, into like aligning yourself with into your sanctification and the glorification of God. If that
So,
makes
so,
if that makes
so
sense.
true faith, genuine faith, then, uh, would be to be in alignment with the most highest principle, which would be God. But you can use that faith, which I believe, getting out here, involves the fact that if you believe we have agency and freedom of choice and volition, you can use your agency to act outside of the will of God. Now, I guess I would ask then. I have a lot of questions here bubbling up, but I think let's get the practical one out of the way. What is the epistemological standard, or how do you know that your actions, your use of your faith, or this ability to act on the world, is indeed in harmony with the will of God? How do you check yourself?
I guess there's a couple of ways that this question could be tackled. Like I'm going to go the psychological route first, and I'm going to take one out of Peterson's book and say that one good marker for this would be emotion. So like when you have positive emotion after you have engaged with an action, you experience positive emotion in accordance to how your action was aligned with the structure of reality. And so that brings confidence, and that like helps you expand and take on more options and continue to grow and move forward. On the other hand, if you take an action that is misaligned to the true purpose of reality, then you will have to suffer the consequences of it. Then you feel negative emotion, and then you have two choices. You either engage in epistemic humility, and then you change your previous way, and you come up with a different plan and move forward, or you descend into reciprocal narrowing, and then you continue to make the same mistake, and then you continue to feel negative emotion, and then it's like a descent. And that's like, he lays it out in maps of meaning. That's one answer, like from the psychological perspective. But I guess you could also say, how else can I know if I am aligned with the will of God? Well, like Christ makes a promise, and he says that he's the truth, the way, and the life. And he also says that he doesn't call us his servants anymore. He calls us his friends, because he has disclosed everything that the Father has told him. He disclosed to us in John 15.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, like, remain in love, attached with me through the vine. And if you do my commandments, if you do as Jesus has said for us to do, then we will remain in life through him, in him. And so you could say, in a way, if you start like also understanding propositionally the Bible and understanding the deep meaning that is, let's say, packed in there, you can also use it as a heuristic for like, what is it that the story of the plan of God is for us as individuals, but also for humanity and for the whole of existence, the whole of the creation.
I want to step in here. I think we're getting bogged down in the weeds when we don't need to. All of humanity has argued for thousands of years what faith is, and we still don't have agreement because we have 28,000 different Protestant denominations, 3 or 4 Catholic, numerous other ones, and I'm trying to see where is this relevant to faith being the difference between investment and sacrifice. Maybe this is just me, but I'm sitting here, I'm thinking I'd rather hear the proposition first. Here's why I say faith is or isn't the difference between investment and sacrifice. And then could we say, okay, I have to question what exactly faith is. It seems to me, I think we're getting in the weeds here that we don't need to get into. You guys
Okay.
can disagree with me. That's my thought. I'm dying to hear
No, that's
the main premise.
absolutely no. That's a fair. That's very fair. Like, let me try to see if I can address it then from.
And besides, everybody
from the-
knows I'm Catholic, so I have the proper faith. I mean, that's settled for all time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's say what marks the distinction is that an investment you already know, you're expecting something in return for what you give. Whereas in faith, it's kind of like part of a larger thing. It's kind of part of it's engaging in something larger, you know. It's not so much only for like your own like benefit, like as in looking at it like I'm doing this to have a return on my investment. It's more like I don't know ultimately what this will entail for me personally, but I know that it's a participation in the good. So I'm going to put my faith in that, you know. Now the problem is also we were saying that you can use faith for other things that are outside of God, right? And that, I guess, in that sense, it becomes an investment because then there's nothing too large for you to actually entirely have. There's nothing large enough for you to have faith, even when the consequences of the action are not always or are not clearly seen as something beneficial for you immediately, you know.
Okay, there. I think that sentence clarified everything for me. I think. Are you saying that the difference between an investment and a sacrifice is an investment is you're putting some of your resources into something for a potentially good return, secularly speaking, whereas a sacrifice is um, I'm putting my faith in God. I don't know where this is going to lead, and I don't expect anything good for me. I just expect something good, and I need to do this to be aligned with God's will, and wherever it goes, it goes. Is that kind of what you're saying? Am I on the right track?
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. I think that's what marks the distinction. I think because there are certain times when, for example, when we give our the 10%, for example, or like whatever you can at mass, right? Whenever you give that little bit of extra money over there, you don't do it because you think, or at least I hope none of us do it because we think that we're going to get something out of it, right? We just do it because we think that it's a responsibility for us to give back all of this like massive amount of like blessings that God has bestowed upon us, to give back a little bit back to like his church or to his community, right? And like, or when we see like, say for example, like a homeless person is starving on the side of the street, and we decide to go and buy a piece of bread and give it to him, you know, we don't do it because we think that we're going to get something out of that action, that the homeless man is going to give us back something, or that, you know, or like, we just do it because I hope God, I think God hopes that the motivation behind doing all of these things is not so much this transaction with him, but it's because out of love we want to be participating into his love, like for him to participate through us on that love to that other person, you know. And so we do that on faith. It's not like this transactional thing that it necessarily has to be, you know. Now obviously it's there's nuance there, because there's times where a sacrifice for things that are harming me are part of like God's love for me as well. So I think that that's what also there's a lot of nuance here in this idea of sacrifice and the idea of love, and it's hard to like get to the nitty gritty there, because it's a lot, I think. But I think they're very intertwined together. I think that's why I brought Hosea, because he said that he doesn't want sacrifices. Obviously, like he did this in the context of like the Old Testament, where the Israel was sacrificing like things on altars and burning things like, you know, like and sacrificing the blood of like animals, and like sacrificing animals and things like that. And now, granted, like it was part of like this whole tradition that it had been established since Moses, like through, you know, through the different laws, but eventually, like through the different prophets of God, he continues to disclose that what he ultimately wants, like the sacrifice, is meant to be understood as a participation in God's love. Is not the sacrificial aspect of it is not necessarily has to be like something of a transaction that we're getting something out of it. I think that's what he's trying to draw the distinction there. A true
Yeah, he said
sacrifice
in
is a
Hosea, he wanted, I
participation.
didn't want your burnt offerings, I wanted your you has
You're
said is covenantal love in Hosea
exactly
6.
You
yes.
know,
Um,
sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jerry. I'm
I
going to be
wonder.
really mean to Juan here in a second, so if
I
I'm
wonder
holding
if
the
the
brakes. I'm going to go full on atheist on Juan here. So
No,
I wonder
absolutely.
if the Book of Job wouldn't have been a better reading, because that was pure and simple sacrifice, hardcore sacrifice. Even his wife told him, why don't you just, what was she said, spit on God's name or something, or curse God's name or something like that. Like, this is a good reading, but I thought what you're saying here, you should have maybe added Job in as well. The
Job.
Book of Job might have been
Yeah,
a.
Job is very interesting. I think that Job yeah, it captures very well, like his whole story captures very well this idea. Um and
It's
also I think that it was Young. He wrote I think it was an essay on a answer to Job, which is kind of like trying to explain, or like his position was that God's answer to Job was Christ, you know, that like ultimately even him himself, being God himself, was willing to put himself into the lowest of lowest for the entirety of creation. So it's like everything it's around love, this idea of love, you know, but properly understood love, you know, like the sacrifice is meant to be a participation into love. It's not this transactional thing. And I think that that's where we ought
well,
to draw that distinction in the semantics. Yeah.
in respects to the difference between Job and Hosea, would it help to if Hosea wasn't read from the perspective of Hosea, but the perspective of God? Because in the book of Hosea, he has him marry a prostitute, um, marry a woman of the streets, kind of, and she keeps whoring herself off over and over again, does it like 6 times, and it's actually a typification of Israel getting whored off to Babylon and the various other countries. And what Hosea is doing there is he's still going after her and buying her back, going to purchase her back. And so the entire it's a beautiful story. The woman's name is Gomer, I think, in the book of Hosea, if you read it in the context. And so all those passages that are talking about, I don't want your sacrificial offerings, I want your hesed, your covenantal love, that is kind of sneaked in there within the context of this weird allegorical story about God going after us when we've whored ourselves off. And so it's from the perspective of God and his hurt, his feelings, it's really interesting contemplation. So that ties up with this notion of love. Um, it's just a perspective shift. So I do think the language. I want to
I
push
think
you on
that's
this
fair.
love language here real quick, because there is also danger in what I just said here, because you invoke these notions of love, and I asked you earlier, Juan, um, how to check yourself, because yes, you can love someone, but that feeling of love can be easily manipulated by someone else, and you can take someone's faith and manipulate it, and it has to be in respect to the highest good. What the hell is the highest good? What the hell is the most transcendent? And you brought up the argument of emotion as well, to use a psychological marker, and I take issue with that, just because I just took Baumeister's psychology course, and he talks about how people think they learn a lot when they make an emotional experience. If the professor can make the class emotional, students will say they perceive themselves learning a lot when they actually haven't learned any new content. It's a psychological trick. What you're doing is you're messing with the salience landscape, so people think they learn a lot.
Okay.
And in that same course, he talks about guilt being such a powerful emotion that you can manipulate people through guilt when they feel guilty. So I take issue with the whole using your emotions as a proper benchmark if you're having faith in the right thing, because that can easily get manipulated.
Yes.
Uh,
No.
can I
Absolutely.
can I lay can I lay out
Yes.
a critique to this paradigm?
Yes.
Because I
Absolutely. Yeah.
think if I lay out this critique to the paradigm about this notion of faith, I think and if you have to go soon, Gerald, uh, let us know, because I know you have to leave here in like 4 minutes.
I just found out the pizza's a bit behind, so I got a little more time.
Okay. Okay. I want to lay out a really hard critique on this, because this idea of faith, Jordan Peterson uses faith like crazy, but those who are of the objectivist school, from Ayn Rand, Yaron Brook is one of them, the professor of capitalism in Peterson Academy. He hates the word sacrifice. He thinks it's a dirty word. Um, he would have sided more on the side of investment. But you, from my understanding with your proposal, you put it more on the sacrificial aspect. You're more on that side of the. It's good to sacrifice, not necessarily good to have an investment in God, right, Juan? Am I am I making a
Um.
presumption here in your proposal?
No. I think you're on the right track, but the thing is that there's nuance there. I think that is not entirely, let's say, because I can understand why Rand regards that as an easy, let's say, it's like a scapegoat for like people that don't want to like assume responsibility. So like I think also like Peterson kind of like has laid out this a lot, like in his philosophy a lot as well. Like and I think like a lot of people that also have seen the horrors of like the 20th century have pinpoint this out, and also like in postmodernity in general, with everything that's happened with like the LGBT community and like all of this DEI stuff, is the same kind of a story, and there's something to be said for that, absolutely. But also, we run the risk of letting the pendulum swing too far again, once again. And I think that's why I don't want to make it. I don't want to lift up this idea of sacrifice too much, because, like
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's why I kind of like brought back Hosea in this idea of like the covenantal love is what he wants, is what God wants. It's not so much this idea of the sacrifice so much. And so why there's like nuance in there, because then we have to consider what is God's will, and then we have to ask ourselves what is love ultimately, what truly is love, not from like a too hippie perspective, but like let's say, from an, I'm gonna call it this way, and I know it's a big word and it's a weird word, but from an epistemological perspective, what is world? Like, how do we know through love, and what is it meant to be, And like then if we are able to like wrestle with those terms first, I think that there is like the groundwork for like talking about all of these things, about like this let's say tonus between an investment and a sacrifice, because it's not entirely that God doesn't want to see us benefit from this sort of like relationship, but it's not a purely transactional relationship. It's a relationship that is bound by love, one
Mhm.
that, by the way, continues to remind us God
Yeah.
through his story, that he continues to give us mercy even though we don't deserve it. And so
So
to participate in that love, in that relationship with him, and I understand that also can be used, like I can be used, can be taken advantage and all of these things, but
yeah.
we must ask ourselves too, like, what does it mean when Jesus says, like, to have the humility as well to turn the other cheek, or to have the faith of like allowing ourselves even to be, um, let's say, trampled upon, with the faith
Yeah.
that like that God himself is in control and will make it better. So it's like, what is then this idea of faith really in that context, and when
So
God says,
I
like,
want to I want to
yep,
pin you on this then with this idea of faith, because from what it looks like, faith, there is an epistemological goal baked in faith. You don't know right away. You have to actually conceptualize, act, and you don't get the knowledge or the return on your investment. So if I'm going to get in my car and drive down the road, my faith is the car works. I drive down, the return on my investment is I arrive at my destination. I conceptualize something, I put a series of actions, and I get there. But baked in that, there is an epistemological gulf between conception now, material manifestation later. And that seems to be the case in matters of religion, in matters of coming to know Jesus Christ, our God. Is if he were to make himself manifest and we were to be in heaven right now, would we be exercising faith? Maybe, maybe not, but I'm not sure if that would be respecting agency. Because to use your agency, your free volition, you have to make a choice. And in order to make a choice, there has to be some degree of separation between your decision making processes now and the immediate results. See, maybe God is so perfect, he doesn't need that separation. He can think of something and it comes into existence. But man, because we're fallen, we can conceptualize things, think of things, and there is a space between the return on our investment, the knowledge that we can get, and that space is where the faith takes place. Is that tracking with you, Juan?
that's striking. And actually, like,
Okay.
something curious
Because
came to mind.
I'm gonna add something to that space.
I
If that's yeah,
Yeah, no, no,
if
no,
that
please
space
finish.
is necessary, because maybe this space, that faith that we move through with faith, the epistemological gulf, is necessary for us to actually develop into theosis and into the love of God. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't have agency. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no, that's
Okay.
that's absolutely, I think that's absolutely on point, and I agree entirely with that. One thing that actually came to mind as you were saying that, it's to your point, is that it emerged this thought that when we talk about the mystery of faith within the context of the church, especially as Catholics, we talk about in the context the um, of the divine economy. It's like an
Okay.
economy, it's
I'm
but
not familiar with that term, divine economy.
but I don't. I don't fully understand it that well, but like it just came to mind like that and I don't know if it's like divine is the right word. I think it's like, but I know that it's referred to as like some type of economy, but I forget the term
I
precisely.
think we're in the
But
divine weeds right now. That's what I think.
but it's curious. It's curious that is referred to it as something like that, like as a type of economy, which makes me consider even more like your point, that is this type of transaction. But to me, I think though, however, like I don't know if it necessarily has to have like this type of like transactional.
Well,
So what's
let's
happening, say for example, with this story of Hosea and his wife? Like what's happening there? What is like the return on the investment of Hosea going back to buy her, for example, in this context?
I think
Is the
it's a
return on the
condescension.
investment?
It's a condescension type of love. Like God's reaching down, um, doesn't have to yet because Israel has kind of fallen, and that's why bound up in covenantal love is this. Hosea is also another word for mercy. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner, is the Orthodox prayer. Um, you're not really deserving of God's love because
Yeah.
you've hoarded yourself off.
Maybe he wasn't.
Yes.
Maybe he wasn't acting out of faith. Maybe he was making an investment because he wanted a return. He wanted her back.
Oh, okay. That's a good insight there,
Mhm.
Gerald.
Maybe that's a demonstration of him, of Juan's point, that we now separated from a sacrifice. Now he's into an investment. And we see many, many, many examples of these kinds of things in the Bible where they're deviating, and quite often I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but many times Jesus would rebuke the apostles like, "Hey, what do you thought?" You like, I'm trying to think of an example right now, but you're getting away from the actual faith and you're getting into like when uh, when he said to Peter, he said, "Feed my sheep 3 times." Or no,
Yes.
Peter, do you love me? Yeah, Peter, do you love me? I think it was. Lord, you know I
Do you
love
love me?
you. Right? Examples like that where he's trying to make a point, where you're getting off track. So I'm thinking maybe this is an example of that here. I'm trying to
So
bring
the
it back
example
to the comparison of faith, of sacrifice versus an investment. Sounds like he was making an investment there.
he's investing into his disciples or his apostles.
Well,
From God's perspective, he's making an investment on us.
I meant Hosea buying her back there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, Hosea represents God in this allegory,
But
and Gomer is Israel.
when we have though, like it's curious when we talk about God making an investment into us, because also in a way it's a little bit contradicting as well, because in a way God doesn't need anything too, right? So he's doing it purely out of love in that case, because he's God. He's perfect already. He doesn't need anything back. He
Hegel
just
would argue with
wants
you about that.
he just wants, like, I think, like, or what could a perfect being, like, need? He doesn't need. He desires out of love to be back in union with his creation. Like, but because he wills it. It's not that he needs it. Like, if his creation decides to maintain distance from him, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't take anything from him. But he loves us so much that he wants us to participate in that. So I think it is a mystery. That's why we call it a mystery. I think it's
Okay.
like a
Now, you keep using the language of love, and I think that's important to tease out what is love. Um, because I want to bring this back down to secular language if possible, because I want to understand what love is. Um, is it okay if I make a counter proposal to you on this?
yes, absolutely, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to make a counter proposal. Hear me out on this one. Uh, I like, Gerald, how you talked about investment, by the way. I want to note that. Okay, before I make this proposal, I like how you talk about the investment from God's perspective. I also think the language of transaction is very helpful because it grounds it. This equals that. This corresponds with this in reality. This is logical. When you start using that's the language of return on investment, ROI, money language. This equals that. This is worth that. And so there's kind of a direct correspondence. There's no vagary in the language. But when you start using language like sacrifice and love, then the language becomes a little bit mystical. And so there's room for bad actors to jump into that epistemological gulf that faith is supposed to fulfill, because you're supposed to have faith. There's room for people to jump into that gulf and use the mystical language of love for bad reasons. And so this goes back to my question about how do you calibrate your faith? How do you ensure that your faith is in line with the will of God? And you bring in this language of love. And so I'm making this proposal because I eventually want to see if we can come to a greater realization of what love is. And so I'm going to swing completely the other way here. This is this proposal. I'm going to read a passage here. I'm going to read half this passage today, and then next week I'm going to read the second half to Gerald's proposal when I counter him. This is from
Thanks
Ayn
for the
Rand's The
warning.
Fountainhead. Yeah, this is from Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead, and there's this evil villain named Ellsworth M. Tooney, and he's like a collectivistic philosopher, like all mystical and spiritual. And he's secretly trying to take over the world, but he takes on the guise of this compassionate guru. And here he reveals his tactic of how he's going to take over the world through love. Look at any. Let me see. I'll read this little pass. It's only a matter of discovering the lever if you want to take over the world. If you learn how to rule one single man's soul, you can get the rest of mankind. It's the soul, Peter. The soul, not whips or swords or fires or guns. That is why the Caesars, the Attilas, the Napoleons were fools and did not last. We will. The soul, Peter, is what can't be ruled. It must be broken. Drive a wedge in. Get your fingers on it, and the man is yours. You won't need a whip. He'll bring it to you and ask to be whipped. Set him in reverse, and his own mechanisms will do the work for you. Use him against himself. Want to know how it's done? See if I ever lied to you. Okay. See if you have not heard this for years. Look, any great system of ethics from the Orient up, didn't they all preach the sacrifice of personal joy? Under all the complications of verbiage, haven't they all had a single leitmotif? Sacrifice, renunciation, self-denial? Haven't you been able to catch up on their theme song? Give up, give up, give up, give up. Look at the moral atmosphere of today. Everything enjoyable, from cigarettes to sex to ambition to the profit motive, is considered deprived or sinful. Just prove a thing that makes men happy, and you've damned it. That's how far we've come. We've tied happiness to guilt, and we've got mankind by the throat. Throw your firstborn into the sacrificial furnace. Lie on a bed of nails. Go into the desert and mortify the flesh. Don't dance. Don't go to the movies on Sunday. Don't try to get rich. Don't smoke. Don't drink. It's all the same line. The great line. Fools think that taboos of this nature are just nonsense, something left over old-fashioned. But there's always a purpose in nonsense. Don't bother to examine a folly. Ask yourself only what it accomplishes. Every system of ethics that preached sacrifice grew into a world power and ruled millions of men. Of course, you dress it up. You must tell people that they'll achieve a superior kind of happiness by giving up everything and making them happy. You don't have to be too clear about it. Use big, vague words. Universal harmony, eternal spirit, divine purpose, nirvana, paradise, racial supremacy, the dictatorship of the proletariat. Internal corruption, Peter, that's the oldest one of all. The farce has been going on for centuries, and men still fall for it. Yet, the test should be so simple. Just listen to any prophet, and if you hear him speak of sacrifice, run. Run faster than from a plague. It stands to reason that where there's sacrifice, there's someone collecting sacrificial offerings. Where there's service, there's someone being served. The man who speaks to you of sacrifice speaks of slaves and masters and intends to be master. But if you ever hear a man telling you that you must be happy, that is your natural right, that your first duty is to yourself, that'll be the man who's not after your soul. That'll be the man who has nothing to gain from you. But let him come and you'll scream your empty heads off, howling that he's a selfish monster. So the racket is safe for many, many centuries. So the epistemological gulf that is bound up in faith, because we kind of establish faith, you act and then you get the return on investment maybe, or you get the knowledge later. That gets psyoped by people like Professor Tooney, who preach egalitarian, these not egalitarian, vague collectivistic notions of sacrificing, of altruistic notions of to the common good. And that's a huge problem I have with this epistemology of faith, that gets psyoped real quickly by those types of thinkers, whether they're aware of it or not. You sacrifice for what end? For God. Oh, anything can be God. You know, placeholder, whatever you could. You know, yeah, that's very, very dangerous. But then you bring in this language of love, and I think there is something redeeming in this language of love, because it says next here. Okay, so many, but you might have noticed something I said. It stands to reason. Do you see? Men have a weapon against you, reason. So you must be very sure to take it away from them. Cut the props from under it, but be careful. Don't deny it outright. Never deny anything outright. You give your hand away. Don't say reason is evil. Though some have gone that far with astonishing success, just say that reason is limited, that there's something above it. What? You don't have to be too clear about it either. The field is inexhaustible. Instinct, feeling, revelation, divine intuition, dialectical materialism. And she goes on talking about reason. So this counter I'm making to you, Juan, or what I'm trying to support your proposal on love, is I think love is bound up with reason. Reason and love. And it's not like love is the handmaiden of reason. I think they're partners. Because the thing that threatens the altruism, the philosopher who propagates these, who likes to psyop people's faith to serve their ends, is the one person speaking the truth, saying, your end, your version of God is a farce. I can see that the God of the Most High is not in line with your false sacrifices that you're offering in the book of Hosea. And they're bashing on the Deuteronomist for, doing false sacrifices. It takes someone who can use reason. But that's why if you're trying to take over the world and start a cult, you stomp out reason. But the problem is, what you get when you stomp out reason in such a society, you get no free thinkers. And you get no love. Because if you can't reason, you can't exercise free volition, you don't get love. And so I think the redeeming quality in this epistemology is love. And the reason why there's a gulf and why faith has to be exercised is so that love can manifest. And so what is love? Let's leave it at that. What is love then? It's... Sorry, Juan, you're on mute.
Sorry. No,
I
it's
wanted to hit you hard because these are questions on my mind. So I wanted to push you back with a counter proposal.
But I think we're going in the right track, and it's let me just first start that it's a very complicated question. It's a mystery, but I think it has to do with this idea of the one and the many. This tension between the one and the many.
It's a mystery. We're going to ground this mystery. We're going to try to understand it so we don't get psyoped by Professor Tooney here.
Absolutely. So the reason why I start with that is because by no means I am anywhere close to be able to explain it myself, but I'm gonna try to address it with whatever I know so far, and then maybe perhaps you guys can help me in the process as well.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with this idea between the one and the many, and between the imposition of purpose that comes from the top, but the multiplicity of expressions that are emerging bottom up, right? And so like we all have different ways in which we are unique, and God mysteriously loves us so uniquely. So let me just start with that first point. So it has to do with this idea between the one and the many, right?
And God loves
And
us
for the many,
uniquely. He loves the
and
many
God loves us
uniquely.
uniquely. And
Okay.
it has to do, this has to do with your idea of being able to have agency and being able to have like our own ability to make our own decisions, you know? Um, and so that comes into play in this idea between like about love, you know? And it has to do also with this idea of like being able to make mistakes and have this access to this mercy that is like infinitely always given to us by God, even though we don't deserve it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is I think it's very pertinent and very true, like how you frame it in the sense that like love is also it's a partner of reason. If anything, like maybe it's the opposite. It's not that love is a handmaiden to reason. If anything, perhaps even that reason is a handmaiden to love, because I think that we can rationalize anything ourselves. But if it doesn't, is not grounded to a purpose, a higher purpose, a purpose that is, you know, aligned to the will of God, which ultimately is love. Like when you read the Gospels, they're all centered about this idea of like participating in love, like being in God's love, you know? Like it's always about, it's talking about like that his commandments are to love one another, to like love God with all your will and all your heart and all your body and everything that you got, you know, and to and the second commandment is like the first one, to love each other like how He Himself has loved us, you know. The idea of love is central, is core to the Christianity. Is not Christianity is not cannot be reduced to just like all of this legalism of how Judaism was. No, Christianity goes completely outside of that. It breaks all of these like things that we knew about like law and order from like let's say like from a Jewish perspective. Let's put it like that way. Even though like this was actually it was a worldwide phenomenon, and this is like God's expression of full God's manifestation of love on earth for mankind, that through him we may be absolved of our sins and may participate in him towards our sanctification, towards our joining ourselves back to him, you know. And so I think, if anything, reason has to be the handmaiden of love,
So
because reason needs to be bound by a higher purpose that informs where reason ought to be placed properly. If reason is put first and then love is put on a second plane, I think then we run to certain problems, because we can rationalize ourselves anything. We can
okay.
rationalize ourselves to be selfish to disorder, or to like say like, oh, the whole is more important than the individual, so let's sacrifice the individual expression and everybody become this communist utopia that is more going to be manifested as a dystopia. No, it's, you have to respect the uniqueness and individuality of each person, you know. And so like individualism in that sense has it right, spot on, but the other side is also true. that we also don't exist in isolation, and we also exist with other people, and God is commanding us as well to be vehicles of his love, you know, not to say that we are all just like the same thing, that I don't know, the individual gets to be oppressed by this whole. No, that's where communism and all of these other weird branches of, like, when God gets replaced with any other political idea, that's what happens,
Mhm.
because they don't get the concept of love right. They don't get this idea of the one and the many properly, and that is what only
So
God can do.
let's pin this.
That
I can agree with the premise that reason is the handmaiden of love when love is properly understood. The problem is where we're going to get some rub here is love not being understood and construed properly. Because love, does that mean I absolve myself to the collective spirit of the state, or does that mean love is just a emotional feeling I have with my that's kind of the banner of the rainbow mafia, the alphabet mafia. What is love? And you're using some adjectives to attach to love, or adverbs. You participate in love, so I accept that you is something you participate in. But how do you check yourself to make sure you're actually, because I could see love is this participatory aspect, right? You participate in the dance of God, the symphony of God, the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good story. But you can have someone, a charismatic figure, coming in the guise of a false prophet, uh, or or a king or whatever, claiming he's the Messiah, claiming he is the new Christ, right? And you could see him. He's got so much charisma, and when you're near him, you feel like you are swept up into a greater story, and so there's that emotional salience, that relevance. You feel connected. Everything's making so much sense. But that false messiah is obviously a false messiah, and now you're having faith in this enclosed system. So you're having faith in this false messiah because you need to work on faith, because you don't get the rewards right away. Reality doesn't manifest itself immediately, so you have to have faith in something. So you have faith in a false messiah, you have faith in an idol, any given idol. And it's a closed system. So the thing is, the feeling is still the same. You're participating in something bigger than yourself. The many is coming into the whole. So how do you observe this thing you're participating in to make sure it's actually the encompassing gospel? It's actually the love of God and not the thwarted imitation of love in some false religion or some false prophet. Yeah.
at the risk of being labeled overly too Christian, I'm just gonna point back at the the big guy, Jesus Christ. He already solved this issue for us, because he claimed to be God, and so, like, he puts us in this, like, he confronts us with this idea of, like, we either with him or against him. If anybody else that is not him claims something like that, then you have to make a decision. You either with Jesus Christ or with this new person that is claiming this thing. And he solves that anxiety, because we either participate with Jesus in Jesus' story, and we commit to that story, and then we see through our actions our participation with him, how we are participating in that economy, in that spiritual economy, or we participate with another thing and we see what the outcome of that is. So, like, the solution, that's why I think it's so pertinent, like, to continue to use this, like, this excerpt from John. Jesus claims to be the way, the truth, and the life, and that summarizes it all perfectly.
So
That we
okay.
can.
To counter, I don't think you said Jesus did all the heavy. He kind of did the work already, but he didn't do the heavy lifting for us because there's still an impetus on us. Because you even said it right there, like you can follow this other person, and you have to see the results, right?
Yeah.
Now here's the rub: is you have to wait to see the fruits. You got to try the fruits. How long do you wait for the fruits to manifest in your life?
See, so
Yeah.
it's a difficult question, and this is where, like, I think also God's love and mercy, also, it's beautiful because it's always available to all of us, and that's why it's central also to Christianity that all of us Christians go out and make disciples for Jesus, because you could say also it's on our shoulders as well, like as like anybody else, all of the believers, to also like be a bridge for God to other people that haven't known the fullness in Christ yet. And so like it's it's a big responsibility, and people can be misled, people can make mistakes, but God's mercy is always available for everybody all the
So
time, even to the end
I'm
of the
asking.
day. And
I
so
want to ask you though. I'm trying to get an epistemological standard here, because and I'm not trying to attack
no
you,
no
Juan. I'm
no no
asking
no
this
no
because
no worries.
I told you I'm going to take the position of an atheist here, so I'm really giving you hard opponent processing
No,
in this.
absolutely. This is great. This is great.
In the gospel, woe unto you, Pharisees and scribes! You go out to a far land and proselytize someone, and you make them a twofold child of hell. That's I'm I'm not using the exact wording, but it's something like that. And you kind of see that phenomenon too with the UFO cult. And when prophecy fails, when they go out, when their belief system starts to falter, um, you might say the epistemological standard isn't measuring up. They get this impetus to convert other people, even though there's some cognitive dissonance in there that it's a lie. And so that's baked into our human nature that if something is not right in our religion or our worldview, the prescription is quite often go bring
to
more
try to
people
make
into
a
your club.
yeah,
Yes.
if more people agree with my thing that I'm deceiving myself with, then maybe it's not
Oh,
me being
yeah, because
deceived.
I'm getting
Like,
feedback from the masses and I'm
yeah,
creating my own little echo chamber.
absolutely.
So how and any false prophet can tell you to go do that. That's just the thing, and they can play on that
Yeah.
psychology. So how do you epistemologically check yourself? So you're not following a false messiah.
I think this is the thing. Like, it's very difficult to answer this question. But I will say the only way that I can answer with is that, you know, in a way, like, okay, just to reinforce the previous point that I was making, that Jesus kind of already solved and did already the heavy lifting for us. And you're right to point out that maybe there's people that have not had privilege to encounter face first Christianity, to participate in the story without having to take the long route there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have been deceived and have been like they have to have suffered the consequences of all of these things, and a lot of the times it's not their fault. But in a way, it also, you know, it also we can, if we have full faith in the promises that Jesus have laid out, it also removes the anxiety, because to an extent he also says that it's not that we have picked him, it's that he picked us by
Mm-hmm.
name from the very beginning. And so everybody that will come to the faith will take its unique path to the faith, and that their unique path makes their own beautiful unique story, and it will be meaningful to them, you know, regardless of like the difficulties and suffering and everything that they've had to endure until they find the fullness of the truth in Christ. They have been picked from the beginning. And so the best we can do as followers of Christ is to bring his word out to the people, is to go and talk with people about all of these things, you know, and also not only talk to them, like live out the Christian faith so that we are good representatives of the faith, right? And so as we do that, we allow God to use us, we become a vehicle of God for the salvation of others. And so there's no need, like anybody that claims to be a prophet or like a Messiah, it's a false prophet or a false Messiah, because Jesus has
Okay.
already done that.
So
Jesus was the Messiah and he claimed to be God. There's no way around it. Like anybody else who claims anything else outside of that, it's not like, that's why I'm saying, like, you're either with Jesus or without,
So
or without. And
I'm trying to, when I talk about someone claiming as being a false messiah, I perhaps mean it's someone coming in a position of authority or prestige or status or charisma. They don't say they're a false Christ, but they say that they are a representative of Christ. That's where you get tricky. But you teased out something here
but you could say in that.
you brought in a point here. There's actually 2 points that kind of bubbled up while I was listening to you. The first one is maybe reason is not the handmaiden to love, but the guardian of love. Maybe. Perhaps. And number 2 is this idea of Christ picking you. So
Everybody.
when you share the gospel, and I love how you talked about Christ picking you, and back to the language of the many and the individual in the particular, that the gospel is also about the many, but it's also about the particular coming into communion with the many. But the gospel, God's love, is manifested in the particulars. Back to Aristotle, in the particular, in the thing in itself. So when you are, and so the epistemological standard for gauging whether something is true in the gospel sense, when you go out and proselytize and try and spread the gospel, are you allowing the person you're preaching the gospel for them to experience individually in their particular arena to make that connection with God? Or are you proselytizing in a way where Ayn Rand talks about the danger of substituting an ideal for a man. We should be following ideals, but she talks about substituting a man in its place. Because remember how I talked about how, in my experience in the Mormon church, I couldn't get above the thought processes of the leader. It's like something stopped and I had to do something to break through that, to actually think above that man, to actually think in ideals.
Yep.
That's Christ for me. I think when you can think above a man, you trust in no man, you are thinking in the ideals. The ultimate ideal is Jesus Christ. So when you are proselytizing and you want to bring other people to make disciples of Jesus Christ, to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, I believe, is to think for yourself, to choose for yourself, to use your agency. When you preach in a way that robs other people's agency, where you use emotional salient tactics, and I know because I was a Mormon missionary, I know about teaching the gospel and giving a dramatic pause. And then following it up again. I know these tricks, man. They practice these things, not explicitly, but it implicitly is in the culture. You're emotionally manipulating someone. That's not that would be making a child. That would be proselytizing someone into a second child of hell. I think here if you're going to properly make someone a disciple of Jesus Christ, you have to present the gospel in a way that allows them to make the connection for themselves. That way, it's actual pure love. I struggle with Christians who want to evangelize in a way that robs agency, where it's very much get into my cult group thinking thought process.
And I think it's a lot to do with actually the way that you don't go out, like how, like in pop Christianity, you see, even though there's something to say about that. I'm not criticizing, like, I don't know. I have no idea, but I don't think when preachers go out in public, like, speaking the gospel, out, like, maybe there's something to be said for that, but also I don't think that's so much in the way in which God works towards the salvation of others. I think it works more when you're participating in the good. It's like when you, without saying that you're a Christian or anything like that, you go and you offer a piece of bread to somebody that's hungry, or you bring somebody into your house and invite them for a meal, and you host, you show them love. When you show them love, then then you start participating in what the good is, and then you shine, and then all these people want that, you know, and then you don't have to go there and convince them of anything because they already see it and they already want what you have. And
But you
so
say
I
that
think
when you give
now,
someone bread and you invite them over for dinner, you're divinizing them. There's this element of respect. It's not just altruism where
no,
I'm
but it's
giving
not
up
this.
myself for you, but rather I'm lifting you up to my level and we're equals now. And I'm giving my charity so that we can stand on equal footing here and I can respect you and like the dignified human that you are.
Yes, but it's not a transactional thing. It's like you don't expect anything out of it. Like you just like when you just it's when you do all of these things out of love. Like say that's why we have all of these different saints that they just like we look up to them, and their lives are a testament of God's love because they went and tended for the sick. They went and actually lived and were in contact with the suffering of the world and decided to do something about it. And that is transformational not only for the people who are receiving the mercy from them, but also for hundreds of thousands of different people along the ages that come in contact with like their stories. You know, that's why
Yeah.
they get to be judges at the end of the of times alongside with Christ because they have participated in the fullness of the truth. You know, and that's what everybody's being called for actually. And it's not that none of us, you know, is ultimately like I think you're right to apply some pressure in these things because it is true. Like it's not about the propositional. We're back again to like the four P's of knowing over back. It's not about the propositional so much. It's about the participation. It's about the
And I would
participation.
say in the realm of ethics, it's not about the having mode, it's about the being mode.
Exactly. It's
Or
about the
Frauds one.
being.
Because I want to push on this. You brought up the Saints things. We look at the Saints because we look at their awesome stories. What do you think the perspective is from the Saints' perspective? Like, get into their mind. Why are they? Why does Mother Teresa care for the dying homeless man? Why does she do that? Like, what is
I
going
think
in her mind? What is her motivational impetus?
I think from reading a little bit of the Saints, I haven't really delved too much in the literature, but something that always it strikes me is that they're always talking in this loving way towards God. Like they're so obsessed and in love, like it's a burning love for God that anybody that they cross paths with, they see God in them.
There you go.
And
Yes,
so
that's
like
what I was looking for. Yeah.
and so because they see God in them, their love just pours out of them and they just want to do everything for these other people that because they also see their suffering. They see in a way they see Christ suffering in them. And so they approach them and then they want to do something for them, you know? And that is what makes a saint, I think. And I think
Okay.
we're all being called to that. And it's something
So
super difficult. It's super
it's
difficult to do.
it's intercession. So hear me out on this. I'm gonna use two examples where they see the love of God in another person. I'll use Victor Hugo for a second. Do you know what bookends are in literary analysis or stories?
I
Bookends
don't, I
are where
don't.
like the end and the beginning and the end kind of have a wrapping together, and they just click. And there's a lot of bookends in the gospel. Uh, a lot of the things, if you're gonna you take the narrative of Satan. The book ends there when the guards are saying things to Christ. If you be the Son of God, do this. You be the Son of God. That is a bookend, hearkening to when Satan was mocking Jesus in the 40 days in the wilderness. So there's those bookends there's that narrative structure. In Victor Hugo, there is the bookends. So the bookend, the closing words of the movie or the book is what I believe is to love another person is to see the face of God. Have you ever seen the Hugh Jackman version? And he's dying there, and he sees the his daughter's mother, who he raised, and it's a beautiful moment. And that's the line: to love another person is to see the face of God.
That's
Go
beautiful.
back to the beginning of Jean Valjean's character turn when he shifted When did he get started on his journey? It wasn't when he got released from parole. It was when he was dealing with the priest and he stole money from the priest, and he was low status, rotten, dirty thief, took money from the priest, and then the police took him back, and then the priest was like, "You forgot the best parts." And then the priest said, "Take this silver with you." And then John is shocked, remember in that moment? And then the priest says, "I have purchased your soul from purgatory. You must use this money to become a better man." And then, so that is the start. That is the baptism, if you want to use the narrative motif. He got initiated. He started his journey. So that's the first bookend. That's the book start, and then that's the bookend of Jean Valjean's character arc. Beautiful. But what's going on there? Why are they perfect bookends? It's because the priest, he saw the face of God in Jean Valjean. That's why he purchased his soul from hell. He knew who he could. He knew who he was. He was making an investment into Jean Valjean. In language of scripture, this is called a dowry. In the bridegroom analogy, you make a dowry payment because you're not going to have her yet, but you're making a dowry for your future wife, and you are making an endowment. And God does the same thing to us. He endows us. You get that when you get anointed in the Christian faith. So there is this payment up front, and John Vervaeke calls this forgiveness, to give beforehand. Forgive. So you are seeing the image of God in another person, and even though they may physically be in a lowly, pathetic state because they're a thief and they just stole from you, or they're begging on the street like they're bread, they're begging on the street because they're a drug addict, you don't see them like that. Like you mentioned at the Saints, they see God in that person. And so they treat that person as if they're Christ, and that divinizes them, and it creates a reciprocal opening feedback between them and that person. And as a result, they become, I mean, given that they respect their own agency, they have the opportunity to become like Christ. That's the through line through Hosea too, by the way.
Yeah. And may I add that it's transformational not only for the person receiving forgiveness, but for the person giving, because it's also they're participating in God's love for that person. You know, it's like the person who's giving as well. You know, God is acting through them in that deep mystery. Is so weird and so beautiful. You know, that ultimately that forgiveness was not extended by the saint; it was extended by God through the saint. When the saint goes and does all those things, you know what I mean? And so it's God is present in the whole economy of, like, in the whole spiritual economy everywhere. And it's just we don't think about it in that way.
Spiritual economy. Let's go to that then.
And I think
Ayn Rand's critique on someone who is, she says this, it stands to reason that when there's a sacrifice, there's someone collecting sacrificial offering. When there's service, there's someone being served. The man who speaks to you of sacrifice speaks of slaves and masters, and he intends to be a master. I think in the false religions of the world, in the economy of Babylon, of the Gentiles, those who are in authority lord it over those, and they expect to be served. And I think there's an epistemological standard there. If someone is coming to you in the name of Jesus Christ, or they're in a position of authority, maybe they're even your priest. I don't know. I'm not going to get into nitty-gritties of church politics. But they are demanding you sacrifice. But they're not doing anything. They're just gladly collecting. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. They're literally feeding on their flock. Then you can know, perhaps that's a good standard to go by. You can know that you need to get out of this system, or you can know that this is not, there's no love there. But if you have a saint or someone who, a good father figure in your life, and they're not demanding sacrifices from you, they have selected you and they are sacrificing for you. So they are typifying Jesus Christ in that relationship. The way you respond to that, I think, like when I see my dad, because I have a really good relationship with my dad, he sacrificed a ton for me. He's older and he's still bending his back for his family. I see him do that. My response to that love is, I want to do the same thing for my kids. I want to do the same thing for me as well. I think that's the epistemological standard. Would you not say?
Yes, I think that's the heart of it. And I think when Ayn Rand says that, it is true, but also like it depends on what you call a master. Like, who's the master? Is our master God, the rightful master? You know what I mean? Or is our master a religious leader and like a human
Yeah.
being that is like, it has our same humanity, it has our same like sin and our same mistakes and all of these things? No, like it's the same thing. Like Ayn Rand has it right when she says like we ought to be careful to put a man as an ideal. No, the ideal is the ideal that has already been Christ. Like Christ already did all that work for us. And so like
Yeah.
all that is left for us is just to claim the gift that he has prepared for us. And like you said, not go out and put all of these like heavy burdens and expectations of people, but rather think introspectively, use the Holy Spirit to improve ourselves so that we can extend mercy to others. We can participate in this love towards others. And through that, it's transformational to us and it's transformational to them. And it's the way in which God works through us and in them and in the whole world. And that is what brings
So
the kingdom of heaven
in
into earth,
in
ultimately.
Christianity, then, so I think what Ayn Rand's critiquing is very much um, a Kantian ethics of Christianity. I mean, she makes these critiques like, the categorical imperative, and you do things without even expecting anything, or this and that. And if you have any other desires, it's tainted. That's the Kantian perspective. And this is because there's this view of mankind being pathetic and lowly and awful and just sinners. And so you deserve to beat yourself over the back and because you suck. And that's not the proper epistemological starting point. Because Ayn Rand's very Aristotelian, where she believes man wants to know and man is good. They inherently want to know. And so her epistemological starting point is don't destroy yourself. Yourself is good and act from that place and pursue your values from there. I think the same thing is true with Christianity, is when you actually make contact with Christ, with the Logos, with God, and it's not like a narcissistic sense of self-esteem. You have a centeredness, a confidence that you're good. Like, you're not dirty. And you may screw up every now and then, but you are, at your core, you are good. And when you're in line with Christ, that's your epistemological foundation is good. Like, your human nature is good. And you can love from there. Because you can see, if you do not have that fundamental belief about yourself being good, how are you going to treat others? You cannot love others as you love thyself, as the commandment says. Caveat, love others as you love yourself in the commandment. So I think, to tease this out from forms of a lot of fundamentalist Christianity kind of has this dismal view of human nature, that they're pathetic, they're weak, they're just screw ups.
Sinner, yeah.
Yeah, but I
And
think Christ, because you said Christ picks you. I think the true epistemological view of human nature in Christianity is one of, you are children of God, like you are His work and His glory, and you shine with His radiance. So
yes, and see, but it's a little bit also to give the devil its due. I think it's also a little bit of both too, right? Because it is also there. And this is something that I think it's part of, like I've been developing a lot in a lot of my thought, is that this idea of like there always has to be a proper tonus between both two sides of a coin to maintain like a proper balance, like a proper, let's say, like tension that actually generates music, and it's important. Like in music, I was taking the course in music, and there's this Renaissance idea of like creating music of going. It was heightened during the Baroque period, but it going from like this concept of the tonic and the dominant, and so the dominant kind of like throws it deviates the melody or the harmony of a song towards like a note that is off of the scale. It wants to push it off the scale. But then you generate a journey when you go from the tonic to the dominant and then back to the tonic. And then that's like that closes the loop and that makes it this sense of like a journey going on. And
Mhm.
so I think that in the same case, you can talk about like these two poles that are always kind of like pulling each other to generate something meaningful in everything that you talk about. Like say in this case, like we're talking about like humans being good or evil. Well, like Solzhenitsyn says, like the line between good and evil cuts through every single human's heart, you know. So it's both. We cannot just say like, oh no, humans are inherently good, you know, and we're always born like we're always born good, and it's like culture that like corrupts us and all of these things, and that's why we have all of these bad things, you know, like to take a more Rousseauian approach. But also it's not the opposite. It's not this that where like, oh no, humans like if left unchecked they're going to be like completely evil and they're just like monsters that they will devour each other entirely. No, there's humanity in all of us. That's like the beauty of Christianity, that humans are, like Solzhenitsyn says, like the line between good and evil cuts through every single one of our hearts, and so we can be both. We can be both, and there's tonos in all of those things. And so in the same way, like when we talk about even like for example epistemology and things like that, eh, eh, or well, what is it like? Say, is it idealism? Is it like realism? Is it rationalism? Well, it's a little bit of all of those in between, and like whatever one it has like a say like a blind spot, the other one covers. And if you form a more coherent, like if you try to incorporate and merge all of these, if you have this more right side of the brain type of like attitude towards it, where you're like it's both and rather than either or, then you're able to incorporate without obviously without surrendering rationality. Like you have to also say like, wait, obviously like out of this, for example, ideology, these things they
Yeah,
don't
there's
rationally fit.
because there's
Yeah,
a dangerous argument. There's a dangerous logical conclusion to that, where it's just a conglomeration of the most of the mobs, the democracy of the drones, as Plato puts it. Um, so you
yeah,
still need the reasoning functioning. That would be logic. That
yes,
that would be perhaps the logos. And so maybe back to what I said earlier, that reason um, is the protecting. We use the word handmaiden to love, the protector of love. Maybe it's even the through line to love.
yeah.
Because
And that
yeah,
they're probably very bound up together, like very, very, very tightly, you know, and like
hmm
they and so I think that it's this, like I don't know, like I think it's very present in my thought, like for a while now, like trying to like advocate for, let's say, grab all of the things that make coherent sense from all of these different views and not try to side like take sides, you know, like say in philosophy we want to, for example, say, oh, are you a we want to be labeled, we want to label everybody, are you an idealist, are you a rationalist,
hmm
are you this or that? No, well, what if like I am a rationalist with a little bit of flavor of idealism and like I don't know, realism, you know. Can I not just like grab a little bit of all of the things that are actually like form a coherent picture of the whole and put them together rather than just like go with one school and just like call myself and give myself this label and just go with life trying to say like this is my group against those group? Or can I just say like, well, I am on the side of the truth and I want to find out using my rationality what are the, what is the truth encompassing all of these different like philosophies, and then incorporate it into like maybe like a holistic philosophy, you know? Is it that a possibility? And I think and I
I think
think
that just makes you a philosopher, Juan.
that is
No, your
true
love
too.
of wisdom. Philosophia is the love of wisdom. But what is wisdom? It's wisdom is a lot of things. It's this discerning thing. It's this wisdom. It means balancing. It also means practical application of knowledge. It's all of those things. So when you are a lover of wisdom, you have that discerning aspect. You have that ability to cut through, hold, balance out what is good, true, and beautiful, and all those things. But I think ultimately it's one who can think for themselves. that they're not gonna take the testimony of another man for what is truth. They're gonna dare to know on their own merit or on their own for themselves. So
Yeah, and but yeah, man, I think that I think even though we took like several tangents, I think that I think we got to a good place. What do you think? Like, I think in a way, I think we explored very deeply the mystery of love, the mystery of
yeah.
sacrifice, the
So
mystery
since
of faith.
I'm the lead listener, I'll kind of reiterate the proposal. Then you wanted to find the faith being the discerning or the difference between sacrifice and investment, and we explored what faith was, what sacrifice was,
And
what
the in
investment was. And what brought up was the potential idea that love is there's something about love being a redeeming quality, so that the epistemological gulf in which faith fills doesn't get psyoped by bad actors. That love, when properly understood, and which is what we explored for this second half of this proposal, because I countered with Ayn Rand's critiques on Christianity, on religion at large, that brought about this deeper understanding between us about what love is.
and I think in retrospect
Yeah.
too, it is very fair to say that the word sacrifice is probably perhaps not even the best one to have used in the to be able to like cut this distinction for faith as well. I think like the right word was probably love, and I think like Hosea actually illustrates that better, like best when he says like I don't want your sacrifices, I want your covenantal love, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that ultimately maybe perhaps even the semantics of sacrifice is not even like maybe they're not even like worth holding on to too much. Rather, like this notion of love is where it is where it's at. You know, it's like where the
So
mystery of faith is at, where the mystery of truth, I think, and of love, you know, and of reason is all gravitate around like it all gravitates around love, you know.